Representative Frazier Gordon.
Here.
Representative Marzian.
Here.
Senator West. Representative Hale.
Here.
We have a quorum.
With a quorum being present today, this subcommittee is duly constituted today to do business. The first matter of business today is the approval of the minutes of our previous meeting in August. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes from that meeting?
Motion to approve.
There is a motion for approve. There is a second. Without objection, it is so ordered. Again, thank all of you members for taking the time to be with us today. Please call the first regulation at this time.
Education and Labor Cabinet, Education Professional Standards Board, 16 KAR 9110 emergency without additional amendment.
This regulation establishes the parameters for the Option 9 expedited route to teacher certification. There are no suggested amendments.
Good afternoon. Would you please identify yourself for the record at this time? Could you push your button there, make sure the green light is on, and please do that one more time.
Yes. Cassie Trueblood, Counsel for the Education Professional Standards Board.
Thank you again for being with us today. There are no amendments to this regulation. Are there any questions from any members of the subcommittee? It appears that there are no questions, so thank you for your time today. Please call the next regulation at this time.
Finance and Administration Cabinet, Commonwealth Office of Technology, 200 KAR 1016 with staff suggested amendment.
This regulation establishes 2 data breach notification forms. The staff suggested amendment amends various sections and the material incorporated by reference to comply with 13A drafting requirements.
Good afternoon. Would you both please identify yourself this afternoon for the record? Could you please push your mic, sir, and green light?
My apologies.
Go ahead.
Carrie Bishop, Assistant General Counsel, Finance and Administration Cabinet.
I'm Ashley Daly, Staff Attorney at Finance Administration Cabinet.
Mr. Bishop, Miss Ashley, or Miss Daly, I'm sorry, I called you first name. My apologies. Thank you for being with us today. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval? There is a motion. There is a second. Without objection, it is so ordered. Are there any questions from any of the members? Anything you all would like to add today?
No, nothing.
All right. Thank you for that concise answer. I appreciate that very much. Since they have nothing and we have no questions, please call the next regulation at this time.
Under Boards and Commissions, Board of Pharmacy, 201 KAR 2015 with staff suggested amendment, and 201 KAR 413 emergency.
201 KR 2015 amends to require 1 contact hour on the opioid epidemic or opioid use disorder in licensing years 2023 to 2028. The staff suggested amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A. 201 KR 2413E establishes requirements for pharmacists, pharmacist technicians, and pharmacist interns authorized to order and administer vaccinations, included COVID-19 and seasonal flu vaccinations to individuals 3 years of age and older.
Would you please identify yourself today for the record at this time?
Yes, thank you. Christopher Harlow, Executive Director, Board of Pharmacy.
Thank you, Mr. Harlow. There is a staff amendment to this regulation. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved. Second.
There is a motion. There is a second without objection. Are there any questions from any of the members today? Senator Alvarado, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just really briefly on ages of kids 3 and up. I mean, obviously, as a doc, we worry about measles, mumps, rubella vaccinations at ages 4 to 5, typically in those. What's the requirement? I mean, are pharmacists going to be allowed to administer those for children who would come in, let's say, at ages 4 and 5 for their routine well-child checks at that age? If they come in and get a vaccination and request that, are pharmacists allowed to administer those? What notification do they have to have for their providers if they do administer those so that kids aren't getting duplicate vaccines?
Sure, thanks for the question. So this language aligns with the PrEP Act. It's a continuation of the rules that have been in place during the pandemic. Then the previous emergency rule expired. So yes, the pharmacists would be authorized, and they do obtain information from the patients regarding the providers, and they may send a notification to those providers.
Anything else, Senator? Yes, Representative Martin, go ahead.
Again, I just want to welcome my former constituent, Chris Harlow.
Thank you.
Thank
It's
you
good to
for
see you.
coming.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, sir, for your
Thank
time
you.
today. Please call the next regulation at this time.
Board of Dentistry, 201 KAR 8550 with staff suggested amendment.
201 KR 8550 amends to include clarifications of the existing requirements for dental sedation and anesthesia regarding basic life support certification, and add that a facility owner looking to obtain or renew their facility shall maintain an active sedation permit. The amended after comments version amends to require at least 2 members of the on-site care team to maintain current certifications in basic life support for healthcare providers and pediatric advanced life support, rather than to specify that the dentist maintain this certification. Clarify that only 1 permit is needed for sedation or anesthesia, and make technical corrections. The staff suggested amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Good afternoon, sir. Would you please identify yourself today for the record?
Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Allen, Executive Director of the Board of Dentistry.
Thank you, Mr. Allen, for joining us today. There is a staff amendment. Do I have a motion? There is a motion and a second. Without objection, it is so ordered. Are there any questions from any of the members today for Mr. Allen? Thank you, Mr. Allen. There
Thank you.
appearing to be no questions. Please call the next regulation at this time.
Board of Cosmetology, 201 KAR 12030 emergency, 60 emergency, 82 emergency, 230 emergency, 260 emergency, and 290 emergency.
These emergency regulations remove forms and details duplicated, incorporate the requirements of Senate Bill 113 from the regular session of the 2022 Kentucky General Assembly, establish additional terms to continue to protect the public from unlicensed and unsafe practices, provide adjusted hours requirements for a license, and clarify the registration process for apprentice instructors, clarify a necessary statement, increase exam fees to help maintain balance on the new contract for exams, and establish a fee structure for new permits, and establish the requirements and processes necessary to receive a KBC permit.
Good afternoon. Would you please identify yourself today for the record? Could you please turn your mic on, Ms. Campbell?
Oh, I'm sorry. It looked like it was on. I apologize. I even looked at it. Julie Campbell, Executive Director, Kentucky Board of Cosmetology.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. There are no amendments to this set of regulations. Are there any questions from any members? There appearing to be no questions. Thank you very much today. Please call the next regulation at this time.
Kentucky Community and Technical College System Board of Emergency Medical Services, 202 KAR 7701 emergency with an agency amendment.
202 KR 7701E amends to allow students seeking certification as an EMT to be supervised by a certified AMT or EMT when performing a skill or procedure, in addition to a physician, registered nurse, or paramedic who are currently the only personnel authorized to supervise EMT students. Allow students seeking certification as an AEMT to be supervised by a certified AEMT when performing a skill or procedure, in addition to a physician, registered nurse, or pandemic who are currently the only personnel authorized to supervise AEMT students. And make changes to Section 8.3 of the regulation without amending the substantive requirements for paramedic student supervision, but to clarify that the provision applies only to paramedics and that, in general, supervising personnel shall be licensed or certified in the Commonwealth. The agency amendment amends Section 11 to comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please identify yourself for the record at this time, please?
Good afternoon, John Wood, outside counsel for the Kentucky Board of EMS.
Eddie Sloan, Kentucky Board of EMS.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you again for being here with us today. There is an agency amendment on this regulation. Is there any discussion on the agency amendment?
Motion.
There is a motion for approval, and there is a second. Without objection, it is so ordered. Are there any questions from members today for either of our guests today? You gentlemen have anything you want to add?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you all. The other gentleman said he had nothing, so we thought we might just get a nothing there also. Thank you guys
Thank you.
for being with us today. Please call the next regulation at this time.
Tourism Arts and Heritage Cabinet, Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources. 301 KAR 2090 with staff suggested amendment, and 301 KAR 2095 also with staff suggested amendment, and 301 KAR 2300.
301-2090 is being amended to remove the restrictions on the use of crossbows while hunting migratory birds. The staff suggested amendment amends various sections to comply with the drafting and formatting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A. 301-2095 is being amended to update definitions, clarify the requirements for importing carcasses or carcass parts of a legally harvested cervid, create an exception allowing out-of-state carcass or carcass parts that are not permissible for import, create an exception allowing out-of-state carcass or carcass parts that are not permissible for import to be transported through Kentucky by requiring that the otherwise impermissible imports be contained within a leak and spill-proof container and prohibiting the contents of that container from being deposited or disposed of in Kentucky. Specify the cervid carcass or carcass parts that originated from and may be transported out of the CWD surveillance zone. Require an individual engaging in taxidermy or processing of cervid meat who accepts an imported cervid carcass or carcass part to transfer all non-permitted cervid carcass and carcass parts to the department after contacting the law enforcement division, and add a new section establishing requirements for the importation of wild lagomorph meat, carcasses, and parts. The staff suggested amendment amends various sections to comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A. 301-300 is being amended to remove the bear quotas and instead regulate the harvest using season length, establish bear zones with specific hunting seasons, split the season dates for bear hunting with dogs to avoid overlapping with bear archery season, change the equipment restrictions for modern rifle bullets and handgun bullets from .270 to .264 caliber or larger, change the equipment restrictions for a muzzleloader from .50 to .45 caliber or larger, and add the requirement that a person shall contact the department to arrange an inspection prior to removing a harvested bear from a bear zone.
Good afternoon. Would you please, both of you, identify yourself for the record at this time?
Hi, I'm Jenny Gilbert, Legislative Liaison for the department.
Stephen Fields, Staff Attorney.
Thank you both today for being with us. There are staff amendments. Is there a motion for approval? There is a motion and there is a second without objection. Are there any questions from the members? We will go first to Representative Marzian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the removing of the bear quotas, what is the quota now, and how long will the season be?
The season varies, so we have all of that information listed on our website currently right now. For the chase only, if you're looking at bear chase, that will be finished September 30th, and then to hunt with dogs, it's late October.
Okay.
That will be updated once this regulation takes effect, and then archery and crossbow. And then additionally, firearm would be different once this takes effect as well.
Okay. And what's the current quota? Do you know?
Actually, it's marked on our website.
Okay.
That check back for current information.
Okay.
So I think that the quota would be changed in this regulation. Let me look.
Previously, it had been a quota system where a certain number of bears are killed in the season within the particular bear zone, and that would, at the end of that day, would end the season. Now we're going to a more normal standard season like anything else, where there's not a set number of animals that'll be taken, but rather the season will be open for the time period, which is a lot more beneficial to our hunters and sportsmen and women, so they can plan better. They don't have to cut their trips short and so forth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
And let me just follow up on that. I think probably what Representative Marzian might have been referring to there was that once that quota would be met, a lot of people wouldn't know that quota was met at that specific time because it was a certain amount. Am I correct on that?
Correct, and we're moving away from that with this change. Previously, you had to call in each day to see if the quota had been met the night before. Now, you just know the season's this time period, and I can go and take my hunting trip as long as I'm in the right season.
Senator West.
Yeah, switching gears a little bit, could you just give us a brief update on 30-second update on the chronic wasting, what's going on there? Are any changes there? Any, not the regulation, but
right.
on the ground? Yeah.
Thankfully, last year with our surveillance zone area, there were 5 counties in western Kentucky that we were kind of identifying. We conducted a surveillance zone and a telecheck where they were actually bringing that harvested animal to certain locations within that zone. And thankfully, all of the deers that were tested, there was no CWD detected. So we are already ramping up for this fall season and looking at other areas and other ways to continue to monitor that. But thankfully, we don't have any verified CWD in the state right now.
Thank you.
Representative Fraser Gordon.
Hi, thank you for being here today. I just have a question in regards to hauling of carcasses in the sealed containers that's referenced. How do you plan to monitor that? I mean, it seems reasonable that there could be a violator dump something somewhere, and then we have CWD in Kentucky. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
That is an aspect of it that we are concerned about, is people violating the law. We have our law enforcement officers that will be patrolling, and if you see somebody driving during deer season with a cooler and it's leaking out, we're going to be concerned about that and hopefully be able to avoid that sort of situation. We had some concerns on the Commerce Clause on being able to ratchet it down any further than this. We had to avoid any impact on commerce through the other states.
Also, I think it's, we really tried to even say spill-proof, leak-proof. We tried to be really specific there. So you can't put it in an igloo cooler that has a spout on the back. And our law enforcement officers are doing a great job of kind of already communicating that in the field, along with our wildlife biologists and our field coordinators who are out there in the public, and just trying to kind of get that message out already. Thankfully, we've had great response from the public because most hunters already understand CWD and they don't want it here. So they were willing, at least in the CWD zone last year, they were willing to comply, and are, pretty positive about the things that we have done so far as a department. So I think we did try to be specific in that in respect to the Commerce Clause, but also, our field staff and our conservation officers are just really getting that message out in the public. We're trying to do that on social media and our website as well, and all the messaging that we send out through email blast to those people who have harvested previously as well.
Any other questions? Senator Yates, you sure you don't want to ask about the waterfowl hunting with a crossbow? No, you got okay. All right. Just for my information, how many people do that?
It's not many.
Okay.
Not many at all. We did have a few requests from people who live in urban areas and are limited because they can't use a firearm, and there's urban geese population problems. So it is removing that restriction, but it is also in compliance with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So we're not going against anything that U.S. Fish and Wildlife would allow.
You see a lot of throwing axes in my
Okay, as a former Fish and Wildlife, I was just wondering, is that something that's becoming really popular, hunting migratory birds with a crossbow? But thank you all for being here today, for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you all.
And good answers on the questions. Please call the next regulation at this time.
Department of Agriculture, 302 KAR 26010, 020, 030, 040, 050, 060, 070, 080, 090, 100, 150, and 302 KAR 79009, all except 26010, 040, 100, and 79009 have staff suggested amendments.
302, 26010 through 150, update and reorganize provisions for general use pesticide applicators, restricted use pesticide applicators, and structural pest management. including definitions, certification and licensing, record keeping, storage and handling, trainee registration and supervision requirements, service vehicle identification, non-certified applicator training and supervision, lawn, turf, ornamental, and interior landscape notice posting, pest management in schools, structural pest control settlement, and penalties for violations. The staff suggested amendments for 020, 030, 050, 060, 070, 080, 09, 50, amend various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A, 302, 79, 009, repeals 302, 79, 010, testing and inspection program, because these motor fuel provisions are now established in other regulations.
Good afternoon. Please identify yourself for the record today.
Glenn Quarles, counsel for the department.
Good afternoon, Mr. Quarles. Thank you today for being with us. There is a staff amendment, or there are staff amendments to these regulations. Is there a motion? And a second. There has been a motion and a second. Without objection, it is so ordered. Are there any questions from any of the members today? Appearing to be no questions, thank you, sir, for your time today. Please call the next regulation at this time.
Justice and Public Safety Cabinet, Department of State Police, 502 KAR 11 010, 060, and 070, all with staff suggested amendments. And under Kentucky Law Enforcement Council, 503 KAR 140, emergency.
502 11010 amends to provide a portal for electronic submissions, to delete previously required forms, and to remove references to the circuit court clerk in accordance with recent statutory changes. 502 11060 and 070 amend to remove unnecessary procedural steps and delete previously required forms. 503-140 emergency amends 2 forms to add additional crimes that prevent certification in accordance with House Bill 206. The staff suggested amendment for 010 amends various sections in the license application to include additional statutory requirements. The staff suggested amendments for 11010, 060, and 070 amend various sections to comply with the drafting and formatting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A.
Good afternoon. Would both of you please identify yourself for the record, starting with you, ma'am?
Amy Barker, Assistant General
Could
Counsel.
you please push your button, make sure the green light is on?
It is on. I'm not talking well enough.
Okay.
Amy Barker, Assistant General Counsel here for the Department of State Police.
Thank you.
Captain Brad Arterburn, Commander of the Criminal ID and Records Branch.
Thank you, Captain, for being with us today. And Ms. Barker, thank you very much. There are staff amendments to these regulations. Is there a motion, please? There is a motion and a second. Without objection, it is so ordered. Are there any questions from the members of the subcommittee today? Thank you, Captain. We appreciate your service to our state very much. Thank you, sir, for what you and your fellow officers do for our protection. We appreciate you very much. Thank you, Ms. Barker, for being with us today as well. Please call the next regulation at this time.
Transportation Cabinet, 603, Department of Highways, 603 KAR 5 155.
This regulation is being amended to eliminate the commercial and non-commercial designation, eliminate the requirement for applicants to obtain the services of a pre-qualified arborist, and provide a uniform method for determining migration.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Would you both please identify yourself for the record today?
Yes, good afternoon. Kyle Ray, Assistant General Counsel with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet.
Yeah, I'm Ricky Sizemore, Permits Branch Manager at the Transportation Cabinet.
Thank you both for being with us today. There are no amendments to this regulation. Are there any questions for either of the gentlemen? Appearing to be no questions, thank you all for your time today. Please call the next regulation at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Kentucky Community and Technical College System, Kentucky Fire Commission, 739 KAR 2070, with staff suggested and agency amendments.
739 KAR 2070 amends to update the agency name to the Kentucky Fire Commission, update definitions, increase the maximum loan amount from $75,000 to $125,000, increase the loan period from 12 to 15 years, remove outdated and unnecessary procedures, and update material incorporated by reference, The staff suggested amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A. The agency amendment amends Section 5, 6, and 7 to delete references to or 75% for consistency with the change of the maximum loan amount to $125,000 and updates material incorporated by reference for consistency.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Would you all three please identify yourself for the record today?
Jeremy Rogers, Director of Operations for the Kentucky Fire Commission.
John Wood, outside counsel for the Kentucky Fire Commission.
Bruce Roberts, Deputy Director of the Fire Commission.
Again, gentlemen, thank you all today for being here with us. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval? There is a motion, and has been a second. Without objection, it is so ordered. There is also an agency amendment. Is there any discussion on this agency amendment? There appears to be no discussion. Is there a motion for approval? There's a motion there has been a motion and a second for approval. Without objection, it is so ordered. Are there any questions on this regulation for any of the gentlemen? Appearing to be none, thank you all for your time today. Please call the next regulation at this time.
Education and Labor Cabinet, Department of Workforce Investment, 787 KAR 2040 with an agency amendment.
787-2040 amends workforce development area provisions to establish standards for dissemination and implementation of policies and guidance issued by the Kentucky Workforce Innovation Board. Staff suggested amendments were approved at the July 14th meeting of this subcommittee. The agency amendment The agency amendment amends the relates to paragraph and section 8 to clarify that this regulation shall not prohibit coordination between the Kentucky Workforce Innovation Board and the Kentucky Education Workforce Collaborative.
Good afternoon. Please identify yourself today for the record.
Sure. Good afternoon. Orrin McFarland, Deputy General Counsel, Education Labor Cabinet.
Stand at ease just a moment. Pardon me there for just a moment. There are staff amendments. Is there a motion for approval? There is a motion and there is a second. Without objection, it is so ordered. There is also an agency amendment with this. Is there any discussion on the agency amendment? Is there a motion, please? There is a motion and a second. Without objection, it is so ordered. Are there any questions from any of the members? Senator West, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I believe it's 787-2040. This is the regulation. I think it was last month. It was here.
2 months ago.
2 months. I'm sorry. I lose track of time now.
Right.
But you guys are going to meet with, supposed to meet with Senator Higdon, correct? And my understanding is you have.
Yes.
He's approved this, and everything is.
That is
okay. And okay.
Yes, sir. That's correct, Senator. We had a productive discussion with Senator Higdon and worked on language together, and that language is reflected in the agency amendment.
Perfect. That's the only question I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Any other questions? No other questions. Thank you for your time today. Please call the next regulation at this time.
Thank you.
Kentucky Commission on Proprietary Education, 791 KAR 110, 20, 25, 27, 30, 35, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100, 150, 155, and 160, all with staff suggested amendments.
This package of regulations makes changes to require the use of an electronic data management system and updates material incorporated by reference moved over to this electronic system. Changes are also made in this package for clarity and to comply with KRS Chapter 13A. Additionally, 791 KR 1025 amends without making changes to the fee structure to address the location of the fee structure for initial and annual renewal license application fees for resident and non-resident commercial driver license training schools. 791 KAR 1030 amends to add the word agent in Section 6 of the regulation for consistency. 791 KR 1035 amends to require students eligible for reimbursement to receive funds from the surety bond or other collateral before filing a claim against the Student Protection Fund. 791 KR 1060 amends to change the deadline to renew a school's license from May 15th of each year to 45 days before the expiration of the current license. 791 KR 1070 amends to require electronic submission of passport-sized photographs for instructor applications and changes terminology from temporary license for instructors to a conditional license. 791 KR 1080 amends to clarify that a CDL training school is required to maintain records of a student's completed application instead of an enrollment application. 791 KR 1100 amends to remove references to outdated teaching equipment from the regulation. 791 KR 1150 amends to align the regulation with the language used in KRS Chapter 165A by permitting other types of collateral as approved by the Commission for surety bonds. 791 KR 155 amends to provide that if a school closes, the school shall arrange with another school or schools to provide teach-out options for students who may need that service in an effort to protect students enrolled at the closing school. 791 KR 1160 amends to allow the executive director to provide a conditional approval of applications until submitted to the Commission for final approval. The staff suggested amendments for these regulations all make changes for clarity and to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Good afternoon. Please identify yourself today for the record at this time.
Good afternoon. Misty Edwards, Executive Director for the Kentucky Commission on Proprietary Education.
Adrian Jacobs, Staff Attorney with the Education and Labor Cabinet.
Thank you both today for being here with us. There are staff amendments to these regulations. Is there a motion for approval? There is a motion and there is a second. Without objection, it is so ordered. Are there any questions for or from any of the members of the committee? There's no questions, so thank you all for your time today. Please
Thank
call
you
the
very
next
much.
regulation at this time.
Department of Workers' Claims, 803 KAR 25089 emergency, and 25195, both with staff suggested amendments.
803-25089 emergency updates to the 2022 Kentucky Workers' Compensation Schedule of Fees for Physicians. The staff suggested amendment amends Section 5 to comply with KRS Chapter 13A. 803-25195 establishes workers' claims utilization review procedures for injured workers. The amended after comments version adds a definition, clarifies definitions, clarifies claim selection criteria, revises deadlines, clarifies peer-to-peer conference provisions, clarifies licensure requirements for an initial utilization review, and establishes that only a physician may approve denials. The staff suggested amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A and amends Section 7 to clarify that written notice of denial requirements apply to pre-authorization requests.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Please identify yourself for the record at this time.
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Wilhoit, Commissioner for the Kentucky Department of Workers' Claims.
I'm Dale Hamblin. I'm the Assistant General Counsel of the Workers' Claims Legal Division.
Gentlemen, thank you today and welcome to our subcommittee meeting. There are staff amendments. Is there a motion for approval? And there is a motion. There has been a motion and there is a second without objection. Are there any questions? Senator West has a question. Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you might guess, my question pertains to the second reg here, 25195. As you know, there's been a little bit of back and forth with this committee and this set of regulations. So we don't have a new medical director in here, clearly. But if you could just briefly flow us through how a claim goes, just briefly, and then how does this change that?
Okay.
I guess. You go ahead.
Okay. Well, long story short is to have a little background to it. Let's say it's a pre-authorization request from a physician. That pre-authorization request automatically has to go through what we call utilization review, right?
Right.
So It goes to a reviewer. That reviewer then has a certain number of days, 2 days actually, to actually accept or deny that for payment. If they should deny it, first off, again, the reviewer, who may or may not be a physician at that point, it can't be denied unless it actually is a physician. So that initial reviewer can approve it, but they can't deny it. But if there's going to be a denial, there has to be a physician to make that denial. Then let's say they do deny it, then the requesting physician, and sorry, there's a lot of physicians in here, I'm going to try to keep them separate. The requesting physician then can ask for reconsideration. Then a second reviewer looks at it, and that second reviewer is to be of the same qualifications as the requesting physician. That requesting physician can also request what we call a peer-to-peer conference. That means you actually get to talk to somebody, and when they do that, then they designate a time and date that they're going to be available. And then hopefully the two of them can talk and work this out. If they don't get it talked and worked out, what would ultimately happen is the party that does not like the result then can request a medical fee dispute with the judge. And that's the basis of it. I don't know if that fully answers your question or not.
That's the current process, correct?
That is both the current, well, yes.
I guess
yes, under the emergency, that is correct.
Does this set of regs change the existing
from
the existing model?
From what it was in 190?
The 25 195. How does this change the structure?
It's largely the same thing. There were a few things that happened after we filed the emergency regulation. The Supreme Court issued an opinion that said that you have to be a physician who's licensed in Kentucky to do one of these opinions. Well, not just this opinion; it was actually in a different area. But
let me help you. Let me back up. So
okay,
this is the general reg that's taking the place of the E-reg. We're moving on from an E-reg.
Correct.
I'm talking about before the E-reg.
190.
190 was the one before
I'm sorry,
that.
I didn't have my number right.
Oh, that's fine. And 190 was declared void and without effect by legislation.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, and that was the one that had the medical director in it. This is basically, if you will, largely what was, before that, before the medical director version, if that makes sense. And then we've added two other things primarily. One is the peer-to-peer process, because that was included in regulations for the treatment guidelines and the formulary. So we just kind of make them work together.
So that's another, it adds a step, but it's another step that allows for an agreement or
it's really part of the second step. You could just ask for reconsideration and not ask for peer-to-peer. And that's okay. But if you'd like to talk to the doctor who's done the review and denied it, then as the treating physician, you get to ask for that peer-to-peer conference. So it's kind of, it's part of the second step. You can add to it.
Senator West,
it sounds healthy. It sounds like it allows for more back and forth, answering questions, and
Senator West, that's exactly what it's designed to do. That instead of before the peer-to-peer, we would have two sides not talking, and actually they maybe actually have a basis for an agreement. I know as a practitioner doing comp, that would sometimes happen, saying I just couldn't talk to the doctor. And we can get talk to explain the background. The goal of this, the overall goal of it, of course, is to get medicals provided to the claimant that are reasonable and necessary in an expedited way. The second part of this, what we hope to see too, is a reduction down in medical fee disputes, because we've got the parties, everybody talking.
Opportunity for settlement.
Settlement,
early
exactly.
settlement. Yeah.
That's what we hope for.
Okay. That's all I needed. Thank you.
Senator Yates has a question. Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate you guys being here. And my only question in reading it to see how it plays out, in the event that the physician that has made the request to do a peer-to-peer discussion, if that is not picked up, if they do not participate in that peer-to-peer, then it is approved automatically? Is that, or what is the next step?
If the reviewing physician does not participate at the date and time without good cause, there's kind of an escape clause, if you will, there, then yes, it would be automatically approved for payment.
And is that the 2-day? What is?
No, that one is longer. And it varies, and I'm not trying to hesitate, but if there was additional information required, or if there was a peer-to-peer conference, then it's 2 days after the conclusion of whichever that is.
So it's 2 days after the conclusion.
And so it's just if the doctor say, let me send you some more notes. And so everyone can talk, and everyone be on the same page, so to speak.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Anyone else? I know we've had a lot of discussion on this in the past and a lot of back and forth, and some of that quite controversial discussion, but thank you all for working this out and coming to something that we can all be comfortable with, and I just want to personally say thank you all for that.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate your efforts.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it very much. No other questions? Please call the next regulation at this time.
Public Protection Cabinet, Department of Insurance, 806 KAR 9025 and 806 KAR 17585, both with staff suggested amendment.
806 KR 9025 amends to update provisions in accordance with House Bill 91 from the 2022 regular session, which required administrative bodies to issue or renew regular occupational licenses to spouses of active duty members of the armed forces without payment of fees or dues. 806 KR 17585 establishes the mental health parity comparison report form and related reporting requirements. The staff suggested amendments for both of these regulations make changes to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please identify yourself for the record today?
Hello, I'm Abigail Gall. I'm Executive Advisor at the Department of Insurance.
And I'm Sean Orm, also Executive Advisor at Department of Insurance.
Thank you both today for being with us. There are staff amendments to both of these regulations. Is there a motion for approval? There has been a motion and a second. Without objection, it is so ordered. Are there any questions from the members? Would you all have anything you'd like to add?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both today. Appreciate your time. Please call the next regulation.
Department of Housing, Buildings, and Construction, 815 KAR 7120, 815 KAR 8010 with staff suggested amendment, and 815 KAR 10060.
These regulations are being amended to adopt the newest edition of the 2018 Kentucky Building Code, which includes definitions and guidance for controlled environment agricultural facilities, add examination requirements, establish non-refundable exam fees, incorporate by reference the HVAC examination registration form, add language regarding the exclusive jurisdiction of the state fire marshal over facilities licensed by the Kentucky Cabinet for Health and Family Services, and add language that allows a local fire chief to request authority from the state fire marshal for the inspection and enforcement responsibility for licensed facilities. The staff suggested amendment to 815-8010 amends various sections to comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A and make technical changes for clarity.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Would you please both identify yourself at this time for the record?
I'm Rick Rand, the Commissioner, Department of Housing, Buildings, and Construction.
Max Fuller, Deputy Commissioner, Department of Housing, Buildings, and Construction.
Commissioner Rand and Deputy Commissioner Fuller, thank you all. Nice to see you gentlemen today. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendment? There is a motion and approval. Without objection, it is so ordered. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? Appears to be no questions. My former seatmate.
Nice to see you, Mr. Chair, yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Rand. We had a nice time setting.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
We
Yeah.
did. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks
for being here today. Please call the next regulation.
Cabinet for Health and Family Services, Department for Public Health, 902 KAR 8120 with staff suggested amendment.
902 KR 8120 amends to clarify requirements for using sick leave, provide that an employer may place an employee on sick leave with or without pay as needed, clarify requirements for using family medical leave for consistency with the federal requirements, revise sick leave without pay provisions, add that adverse weather leave may be charged to the employee's accumulated compensatory leave, and make other changes necessary for KRS Chapter 13A compliance. The staff suggested amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Good afternoon. Would you please identify yourself today?
Julie Brooks, Regulations Coordinator for the Department for Public Health.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. When you came to the table, everybody in the room left.
That's okay. I don't take it personal.
There is a staff amendment for the regulations here. Is there a motion? Motion. Thank you, Senator. You got that one in before Representative Marzian got that one in today. So we do have a motion and a second. Without objection, it is so ordered. Are there any questions for Ms. Brooks today? Appearing to be no questions, thank you for being with us today. Please call the next regulation.
Thank you.
Department for Medicaid Services, 907 KAR 1065 Emergency, and 907 KAR 23020. That one has a staff suggested amendment.
907-1065 Emergency amends to incorporate the $29 reimbursement increase and clarifies how this additional funding will be reflected in future nursing facility rates. 907-23020 amends to allow certain substance use disorder drugs to receive additional dispensing fees per month. It updates 340B data tracking measures. It removes cost-sharing requirements in accordance with 2021 regular session Senate Bill 55 and clarifies that both in-house and contract 340B pharmacy reimbursements do not include the 340B ceiling price and the lowest of logic methodology. The staff amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please identify yourself, sir?
Good afternoon. I'm Jonathan Scott. I'm Regulatory and Legislative Advisor for DMS.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Maybe they all left because you were coming to the table. I'm not sure. Maybe it wasn't Ms. Brooks, but there is a staff amendment for this amendment or this regulation. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Senator Alvarado's got the motion and Representative Marzian with the second. Without objection, it is so ordered. Senator West has the first question. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This go into the fee, the $29 fee. What was the fee before the pandemic? We've got the pandemic-related fee, and then going forward, what's it going to be? The reason I'm asking this question, I do know we had, I can't remember what year, but we had in budget talks, we provided an increase in the fee, and then there was some dispute in the interim as to what should have happened, and that was supposed to have been corrected. So if you could just speak on that, see if we're where we need to be,
Sure.
please.
So the $29 fee is this is the $29 fee that was added in the budget, and so now we are going forward, we're going to add that $29 fee into the annual rate, or into the rates that are paid to the nursing homes on an ongoing basis. So we're just incorporating that. So this reflects kind of the movement from the pandemic-related fees into just kind of the ongoing operation of these of nursing facilities going forward. They will get this $29 fee going forward, and then eventually, as we recalculate their rates and put everything together, it will just that $29 will be blended in.
Yeah. So was this the 2020 budget that we first, I think?
It might have come around in the 2021 because
2021. Okay.
That might be.
I know we intended to give these facilities a bump.
Yes.
And so I just want to make sure that's what's happening.
Yeah. This is the bump, and this is the incorporation of the bump on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
Senator Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So first of all, thanks for incorporating this. This is a lifeline for a lot of our nursing homes that would have assuredly gone under if they didn't have that extra $29. Still not enough for what they need, but it kept them afloat, and so it's going to help. The cost of practicing medicine is increasing all the time, and so often if the reimbursements don't go up, people think, well, you'll just make it with what you've got, and that's why you don't see a lot of primary care offices opening up, and it's having to be part of big corporate areas because you just can't make it on the same reimbursements we've had in the past. So it's much needed. On the outpatient pharmacy program, I think we've discussed this, I think, privately as well. This is a hot topic, obviously, with a lot of our MAT providers about the reimbursements. Could you describe how this is going to look now? Because what happens in an MAT clinic, if someone comes in and gets a prescription for Suboxone, for example, when they're being inducted on this medication, they have to come back within a week, get drug tested, and they only get a prescription for a week at a time. The pharmacists say, well, we're having to fill that every time. We should get the same dispensing fee. They were talking about just doing it on a monthly basis, not on a weekly. It was a huge debate. So this, I think, addresses that. Could you just let us know how this is going to be handled now?
That's correct. Going forward, especially for MAT drugs that meet that standard of care, where they're coming back every week, getting a new prescription, there's going to be a dispensing fee that should be a good help to a lot of our some of our more specialized pharmacies that are really serving the MAT population that is coming in every week. So we're hopeful that the additional dispensing fee will allow those pharmacies to remain in business and be able to continue serving this population. So it was we were happy to see that incorporated into the reg when we were able to refile earlier this year.
So is it the full amount that's going to be, so when they have to go in every week, let's say to get that, when they're first being inducted, they'll get a full amount? Is it a lesser amount?
It's 1064. I think there may be some interaction between whether it's going to be called a professional service fee or a professional dispensing fee as we go through the month. There may be sometimes when the pharmacist or pharmacy provider is just being paid for their expertise when they're interacting with the recipient that's coming in. But I believe that it'll either be called a professional dispensing fee or professional service fee when they come in, but it's going to be that 1064.
So the amount is the same, just semantics on what it's called.
Correct.
Thank you very much. That really is helpful. It was a huge issue, and I think that this settles it, so we appreciate it. Thank you.
Hopefully.
Thank you, Senator Alvarado. Good comment and good question. Anything else? Thank you, sir, for your time today. No further questions. Please call the next regulation.
Department for Community-Based Services, 921 KAR 1380.
921 KAR 1380 amends to update forms incorporated by reference.
Again, for just the record, would you please identify yourself one more time?
Certainly. I'm Jonathan Scott. I'm Regulatory and Legislative Advisor for DMS, but I'm here on behalf of my colleagues and friends in the Division of Child Support.
No amendments are on this specific reg. Are there any questions from any of the members? There appears to be no questions. Again, thank you, sir, for your time today. I think that brings us to the conclusion of our meeting this afternoon. We will be informed at this time when the next meeting will be.
We are scheduled for Tuesday, October 11th at 1 p.m.
Tuesday, October the 11th at 1 p.m. is the next meeting. Thank everyone for your time today.